Joining us now, former governor of Virginia, Governor Mcauliffe. He has a long resume. He was chairman of the Democratic National Committee. He was chairman of the Clinton for President campaign 2008. And I call him Governor McGenius because he has a great record of governor of Virginia. Can he translate that into a successful run for president? And he is joining us now, and we've got a theme song for him. Go ahead, let it roll. All right, joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, former governor of Virginia, Governor Terry McGenius. Hey, Governor, great to have you.
John, before we get started, I have a treat for you.
Okay.
Just like you married up, I married up as well.
Yes, sir.
And definitely married up with Ann, and I definitely did with Dorothy.
Yes.
I'm standing here with our former First Lady, who, as you know, through her efforts on childhood nutrition, 12.5 million more breakfasts served to 60,000 children in need, and she wanted to say hello to you first. How's that?
Oh, that is really a surprise.
Good morning, John.
Dorothy.
I hope you had a good breakfast today. You're going to need it for this next little piece here, right?
Actually, I did. Normally, I don't eat that much breakfast, but I got a whole bunch of scrambled eggs and a veggie omelet because I know I had your husband on. I got to be at the top of my game, right?
That's for sure. Start the day strong. Well, it's great to hear your voice. I just wanted to say hello when I saw you on the schedule this morning.
Oh, that was so nice. Former First Lady of Virginia, Dorothy Mcauliffe. See, I thought you should have run for Congress. You would have won, I told you to do that. You would have won.
Well, we won big. 3 amazing new women in our delegation in Virginia. We couldn't be happier. So,
Yeah.
But thank you always for the support, and give my best to Ann, and I'll let you all get going.
I will do that, and thank you so much. And, Governor, I did marry up.
Morning, John.
There's no question about that. I hit the jackpot.
No question.
Both of us did that. Okay, let's get. We've got an hour. We're going to do 2 segments. Let me start with this. I put up a billboard in Richmond with your picture on it, and
I've heard.
It says.
I've had people call me, John, who are driving down the highway, and all of a sudden there it is, with a big picture of me holding a beautiful Virginia craft beer, saying "Miss me yet." In fact, I had the mayor of Richmond call me the other day. Was driving down the road and saw it, and he almost the car went off the road when he saw it. He had to call me right up.
Well, if you've seen our billboard, it's right there going into Richmond on I-95. It's got a picture of Terry Mcauliffe holding a glass of beer, one of the beer companies that he brought into the Commonwealth, and it says it's, of course, an ad for listening to our new radio station in Richmond, WJFN 100.5 FM, Real News, Real Talk, and it says, "Miss me yet?" with a question mark. So kind of a funny billboard. And with everything that's going on, I think people do miss you right now, especially the Democrats. Let's get to your legacy in Virginia,
Sure.
Governor.
Yep.
$7 billion in business that you brought in. There's another $13 billion on the table. What would you consider right now to be your legacy of governor in Virginia?
Well, I think clearly, John, as I say, I said from day one, we're going to build that new Virginia economy. If you go back to when I took office, our economy had really been lagging because of sequestration. I went into office, if you remember the prior governor does the new budget for the new governor, which is really, we ought to change that. The outgoing governor does a 2-year budget in December of, the year, your new governor's coming in January. But I inherited a huge deficit, as you know, about $2.4 billion. I'm very proud that I left a very large surplus. But as you say, we created a couple 100,000 new jobs and $20 billion, a record, which was really $7 billion more than any other time. But the more important, John, was we diversified the economy. We made Virginia number 1 for cybersecurity, number 1 for data, number 1 for unmanned systems. So when we talk about jobs, we brought in all of these companies, over 1,000 new and companies came into Virginia, a couple 100,000 new jobs, but in new, varied businesses of what I call those 21st century companies. We recruited them. I traveled the globe. I was the most traveled governor in America, 35 trade missions to 5 continents. But I went out. I said, this is what Virginia's all about. Come to our beautiful state. And you know what, John? They did. And now we have so many jobs in Virginia. Unemployment went from 5.4 to 3.6. I remind you that we're able to do it really in very tough economic times. And personal income went up of 12.5%, which I'm very proud of. So when I talk about jobs, they're good-paying jobs. But underneath all that, and I worked very closely with the legislature. We did it in a bipartisan way, a $1 billion investment in education, a record amount of money that we put in. We redesigned all of our schools. We got rid of 5 standards of learning. We had way too many tests. Teachers were teaching to test. Kids were learning to memorize. We gave teacher pay raises in my budgets, which was very important because they'd gone years without a pay raise, put money into the educational infrastructure. And we now, if people look at us, when I went and recruited Nestle out of California, I remember sitting in L.A. with the CEO of Nestle, the gigantic corporation, wanted to get him to L.A. to come to Virginia. We finished it up after meeting. I said, why? And he said, you know what? It's your education system. You've invested in an infrastructure and education for the future. So we got him to move. I mean, I could go company after company. So I did what I said I would do. I made Virginia open and welcoming. I had to veto a lot of the crazy bills. And remember, John, before I'd come in, we'd become a laughing stock. We had that horrible transvaginal bill in 2013 that Republicans passed. Governor signed. Horrible bill. If you remember, comedians on late-night television were laughing at Virginia every single day. That is not a message when you're trying to recruit Amazon and Google and Facebook and Microsoft and Salesforce and companies like Nestle and others. You got to be open and welcoming. And by the time I left, all that stuff was done. We're open, we're welcoming, we're a new state, we're a dynamic state. We are the Silicon Valley of the East. And I think because of that, and everybody talks about investing in all these programs, you can't do any of this, John, unless you have a strong economic engine which generates revenue to invest in these programs. So
look,
I
Governor,
think if you look at it, and then, of course, on the social, my restoration rights by far was my greatest achievement.
Right. Well, I want to talk about that in a minute because I just had the White House on talking about the First Step Act, and that ties into it. I'm going to get to that in a second. But you said before you were there, Virginia was a laughingstock because some of the crazy things that passed. Then you were there. You were the jobs governor. You brought Amazon, Nestle, all these big companies. Now you leave. Now Virginia is the laughingstock again, where we've got 3 of our state leaders that people make fun of on late night news now, just like or shows, just like you said. You've got the third trimester infanticide bill. So, like, the only period we were not a laughingstock was when you were governor, right?
Right, and I remind you, John, in 4 years we had no scandals. Very proud of it.
I know. Well, you got certainly have some scandals since you've been out. I want to get to restoration. I just had the White House on talking about the First Step Act, Governor Mcauliffe.
Yes.
And I know you were in favor of a lot of those pieces. I supported your restoration of giving felons the right to vote, because if you're going to decrease recidivism, which is at a phenomenally abhorrent numbers in Virginia and across the country, you've got to be able to bring former felons back into society. Giving them the opportunity to vote is one of those. And I believe that Republicans, instead of whining about it, should have gone out there and find a way to get their votes, jobs and opportunity and capitalism, instead of whining about letting them vote. How does
John,
that tie into the First Step Act?
I remind everybody in Virginia that 40 states in America, 40 out of the 50 states, it was automatic. There's no governor involved. You serve your time, and you get your voting rights back. We were an outlier, and it was most of the southern states, John, and it was really a remnant of Jim Crow. It happened in 1902 in Virginia. State Senator Glass put in our Constitution with a poll tax and a literacy test, and his quote that day, "I am doing this to eliminate the darky from being a political factor in Virginia." That was his quote. Well, 114 years later, I got to stand at the same Capitol, new sheriff in town, and to give people back their right to vote. And I was 206,000 that day. And then foolishly, the Republican leadership in the House and Senate sued, said I didn't have the authority. The Constitution is very clear. Article 4 specifically gives the governor the authority, as you know. A.E. Dick Howard, who was our drafter of the 72 Constitution, was my legal advisor. It is very clear. And then, as you know, the Supreme Court, we're one of two states appointed by the legislature, as you know. It's us and South Carolina. Well, home game. They said, no, the governor doesn't have the authority because, guess why? Not on constitutional grounds. They said, no governor's done it before. Well, that is the crazy, that's not a constitutional argument. It's also a crazy argument. Well, no governor of Virginia has ever been impeached before. Does that mean you can't use impeachment? I mean, the whole theory. But then they said, of course, I had to do it individually. I said, fine. I'll do every one myself, line them up. I'll take them out to the Civil Rights Memorial. I'll sign every single one myself. And as soon as I did that, they went back. Howell and Norman went back, tried to sue me for contempt of court. And the court ruled with me because, they had been blistered around the country by editorials, calling it a kangaroo court. It was really, it's just a place we didn't need to be. I was trying to do the right thing for individuals and bring Virginia in with 40 other states. And then the court said, no, he does them individually. So, I ended up, got 173,000. And because of the lawsuit, and I got to do it individually, John, the Republicans, I want to thank them. I had one of the largest voter registration drives in American history because I sent every person an individual parchment with my signature and the Commonwealth seal, a voter registration form, and a self-addressed envelope. But put all that aside, you hit it on the head. Because when people get back in society, you want them back working, paying taxes. You want them feeling good about themselves so you do not have them causing problems again. And I'm very proud, John. My last 2 years in office, Virginia had the lowest recidivism rate of any state in America my last 2 years in office. That is morally the right thing to do, but it also, John, saves the state money and not having someone go back into our criminal justice system. That's a good thing for everybody.
You did the right thing, and if I am...
And save the state money.
If I'm chairman of Virginia Trump campaign in 2020, my strategy is going to be to go after those votes. I don't want to write them off. I mean, I think they have a right, the ex-felons that are now voting, to be able to have choices. And so rather than complain about it, I'm going to actually go after them. Okay,
and
let's
John,
get to
I kept
some
telling them that, and they kept saying, oh, he's doing it for political. He wants to help Hillary. Well, John, if I were that smart, I would have done it the year before when I was trying to win one seat in the state Senate. I did it.
Exactly.
I started, and in fact, you're going to read all about this. I just finished a book. In fact, I have to get it to the publisher. The final product is due this Friday, which I've been working on literally for 3-4 months, called Beyond Charlottesville, Fighting White Nationalism in America. And I talk a lot about this in Virginia's history. And I make the point in it, they kept attacking me for doing what was the right thing to do. And I said, John, exactly what you said. Quit spending your time suing me and go out and earn their right to vote.
Damn, that's right.
I think the average person, John, back then, I think if my memory correct, was a 42-year-old white male.
Right.
So
exactly. I mean,
go get them. Instead of whining, complaining, suing, go and earn their right to vote. Tell people what you're going to do for them.
If I'm chairman again of the 2020 Trump campaign in Virginia, that is exactly what I'm going to do. Speaking about presidential politics, now CNN the other day said that former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, they said is seriously considering a run for president and a decision is coming soon.
Yep.
What's your comment?
Yeah, and I have been serious. I've been working it just like I've done everything else in my life. I'm very close to a decision. I wanted to have it done. I said by March 31. I'm very close, but I'm still making 60, 70, 80 calls a day. I'm still meeting with policy folks. I'm still meeting with foreign policy experts. I'm going through the process, and we'll get there soon. It's obviously a very big and important decision, and I'm working very hard at it, and we'll have a decision shortly. I'm going to do it on my timetable. There is no set rule when you should in and when you shouldn't, and If you look historically, people got in much later. But I'm going through the process, as you know I would, John, and calling everybody. The list keeps getting longer every day, which is, I guess, a good thing when more people are encouraging you to run. But, you want to put together a serious, thoughtful campaign, and it's got to lead. But if I do it, John, I'll be very clear, which I did last year campaigning all over the country for candidates for governor, Senate, and House. I'm going to use Virginia as the model. Now, this was a state, and talk about the economic condition we were in, and we went from deficits to surplus jobs, but talk about the renaissance that occurred in Virginia. If we can do this in Virginia, which was a great southern state, the same things that we can do on childhood nutrition, on education funding. I mean, John, we did a record amount on transportation funding. We redid. I mean, I don't have to remind you, John, we saved the port of Virginia. When I came in, it had been underwater for years. I replaced the board. We invested money. Now we're one of the most successful ports in the country. We had saved United Airlines, was leaving Dulles Airport. We were able to keep them there. I just had lunch with the CEO of United just 2 weeks ago. Talked about that. If we had lost United, we would have lost 35,000 jobs. But also our legislation on transportation. Don't forget, that route we had down 460 where $300 million of taxpayer money had been spent on a road. No permits had been applied for. Think of that. I stopped all that. No road in Virginia gets built now unless you go through our process where it goes through a metric system and you get scored points. And if it doesn't meet, you're not going to get the road built. We took politics completely out of road building. We did about $10 billion of projects. And, look what we're doing with Amtrak. So I talk about infrastructure, job creation, education funding, health care. That's a message that worked in Virginia, and I think it's a message that works in, every state in the country.
Well, let's talk about that because right now a lot of people are saying that you're way out of step with where your party is headed now. And I'm just going to start with the first question, prompted by Mayor Bloomberg. Basically, if you get into this race, are you going to run an apology tour and apologize, Governor Mcauliffe, for being a successful white male?
No, if I do run, John, first of all, it'll be the funnest campaign. It will be a happy tour. I've been, listen, you remember, John, I started my first business at 14 because I had to pay for college. I pinched myself. I've had so many I've started dozens of companies. I've been an entrepreneur. I've seen ups and downs. That, I think, is what you actually want than someone who's been a professional politician. And I know some people say, well, Michael Bloomberg, he's a billionaire. He can't run for the Democratic nomination. Are you kidding me? This is a self-made man who created a vibrant business. Thousands and thousands of people he hired, paid them well, and provided them with benefits. And that's going to be a negative? I mean, are you kidding me? That is the American success story. He is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And I used to recoil when people say, oh, we can't have a billionaire like Michael Bloomberg. What a success story. And you know what? Even after he's made his money, John, this guy has given billions away to charities to help people's lives. I mean, he is a model, that people should follow. So I do a happy tour. People, I think, John, are really looking for someone who will give them pragmatic, results-oriented. And one benefit of as a governor, unlike folks who sit in Washington and, they get to spend a lot of time talking, a governor will tell you, here's how many jobs were created, here's how many roads were built, here's how many roads we're clearing, here's how many tornadoes and hurricanes and flooding issues that you had to deal with. I mean, it's a very specific. It's a CEO role. And I think that's what people want. People putting out big goals and aspirations, and that's great. I got to talk about things that we're going to get done because what do voters want? They want a good-paying job. They want their kids to have a good-paying job, which means a great education system. They want to get on the roads, and they want to be able to drive and see their kids play a ball game. It doesn't take them 2 hours to go each way. And you know what? They want health care, and they want everybody to have affordable health care. Folks don't want an awful lot. They just want their politicians to do their job, quit complaining, quit fighting, preserve my taxpayer money, and if you can, put a little more money in my pocket, and let me enjoy my life.
Let me just get to this here, straight up. Are you a capitalist?
Am I a capitalist? Absolutely.
Yes.
You were talking to a kid who literally went out and started a business at 14. At 15, my business had grown so big, I needed to get a huge dairy truck that I had to carry big 55-gallon barrels of tar around Syracuse, New York. And, John, I was driving it, went out and got it. I was on highway. I didn't even have a license yet. Mm-hmm. I was an entrepreneur. Of course I'm a capitalist. Now, can we do better with the system to stop income inequality? Sure. All of that we need to do. We need to lean in, and because, people haven't felt their own, standard of living has gone up. And, in fact, for many it's gone down. But, yes, I'm a capitalist.
So you're a capitalist.
I find it funny you even have to ask that question, but you're right.
I have to ask you because you're in a party now where the majority of your opponents, if you run, can't even answer the question. They can't even admit to being capitalist. And you've got AOC out there. Look, you made the deal to get Amazon into Virginia. I want to talk about that for a second. Tens of thousands of jobs. AOC, she got Amazon in her neighboring district, and she kicked them out. 25,000 jobs right off the bat, $150,000 average. She kicked them out. She's been cheered for that. So I want to understand where she fits in, how you feel about Amazon, and what you think of the Green New Deal.
First of all, listen, I think AOC, I think she's great. I love having new people in with a lot of spirit and energy, and she's entitled to lay her agenda out, and good for her, challenges people. But as it relates to Amazon, now, this was a big deal. We submitted the bid in October when I was governor, and we worked hard on that bid for months, very hard. We had a very unique bid. We came up with the idea of getting colleges and universities. We went out and asked all the colleges and universities to be part of our bid. I want to thank Virginia Tech, of all of them, is the one that stood up with Tim Sands and became our partner in that project. And that was a very important thing that we added. When this first got started, I felt very good we were going to get it from day one. Always felt very good. I remember I was flying on a helicopter. I was with my Secretary of Commerce, Todd Haymore, and his BlackBerry said that, or his iPhone said that, Amazon is looking for new headquarters. I said, man, you call Seattle, you call the office. I want tickets to Seattle tomorrow. We're going up. We're seeing Bezos. We're going to get this thing. And, well, Todd ended up talking to the Amazon people because we had just won Amazon Web Services in Virginia. We just announced the largest solar field in the Mid-Atlantic in Accomack County. So we had a good relationship. And they said, well, maybe we don't want the governor going up yet. But we really put time in this bid. A lot of communities wanted it. The state was going to put up. I said, no, we're not putting up all the money. So I said, you go back. Everyone who wants to bid, you're going to put up some money. So I made the local community share the expense with us. We went out and got McKinsey, put a great bid together. And this, John, was life. It's transformational. It's 25,000 jobs at $150,000, plus a kicker of $12,500, which after New York we're definitely going to get. So, for us, $37,500, a lot of jobs for Virginia at $150,000. This is life-changing, game-changing for any state that was able to do it. We don't put any money out till we get it back, so it's a instant moneymaker for the Commonwealth. But more importantly, it puts us up at the top leagues in America now. We are the Silicon Valley of the East. In New York, and I feel bad for the Governor Cuomo. I mean, he wanted this. He worked it hard. But you had people talking about the deal in New York that didn't have a clue as to what they were actually talking about. They had a $3 billion incentive package. 90% of the package, John, 90%, had nothing to do with Amazon. If it was the John Fredericks Company, there were two funds, the Excelsior Fund and the City Fund. It didn't matter what company. If you say X amount of jobs, you're going to get X amount of money back. And they made it about Amazon. The funding had nothing to do with Amazon. Any company that came in was entitled to get those funds from New York. And I think after like 20, 25 years, they recoup about $27 billion. I mean, it was a huge win for New York. It's a huge mistake for New York. It's embarrassing for New York, and I think, there are consequences to their actions, but this is a generational change, $150,000 a year. And that's why, so we'll get more out of it. Nashville will get more out of it. I've talked to the Amazon folks. They're not doing anything else. But, this is how you build economies. This is how you increase wages and put more money into people's pocket, which, elected official, that's your job. put more money in their pocket and make their life easier. It's not a difficult concept.
Well, Governor, that makes a lot of sense if you're running for governor of Virginia. But if you're going to run for president, your party is way out of step with this, or you're out of step with them. For instance, let me just give you a couple examples. When you were in Virginia, you were an advocate of all of the pipelines to bring energy to create jobs. Pipelines are an anathema to everybody else that is running against you, or if you decide to run. So I want to get your comment on that. So, I mean, how do you go into this primary if you decide to run, talking about jobs and pipelines, when your opponents are talking about we don't want any pipelines, we don't want any energy except solar and wind, and we don't want cows farting, and by the way, we want to guarantee everybody an income at $15 an hour, whether they work or not. How do you fit into this new world?
Well, and I've been very straightforward. I wrote a big op-ed in the Washington Post a couple months ago, and I talked about these issues. And I said there are things out there that are just, maybe you want to get them someday, but they're unrealistic. Let's take free college. John, there is no way that the government should be paying for Terry McAuliffe's 5 children to go to college. Mm-hmm. I can afford it myself, and I should pay for it. Should we do something like in America, like we did in Virginia, the first state in America to have a workforce performance development grant, where we went around to the business community and found out what jobs were needed and came up with a list of 166 credentials and said, if you get one of our credentials, we, the state, will pay 2/3 of the cost of that, because I think it's important that that you have some investment in what you're doing. It can't be all the state money or all federal money. You want to make sure that people are going to show up and do what they need to do if we're investing taxpayer money. And that workforce performance development grant has been a huge success and modeled by other states after we did that. I remember one of my last events, I went down and we had a great event at Fort Pickett. We had a lot of folks from Wakefield who went and got a credential to work on power lines. I think it was 27. And I went down to they went through our program. We paid 2/3 of the cost, and they went through it. We had like 27, I think that was the number, of young men who went across the stage. I gave them their credential. They went out, all of them with a job, starting pay of $72,000. That is a win, 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 win. That's what we need to do. We have many jobs open in America today, but we don't have the skilled workers to match the jobs that exist. So let's use our education system. I can see a place where if we're offering, credentials and apprenticeship programs, make community college free. That is what makes sense, but not paying for anyone to go to college and, we're going to pay the whole thing for them. So, I make those arguments. They come out with a new Green Deal. It's great. It's aspirational. It's a non-binding resolution in the United States Senate. So I don't get myself too worked up on it. I do talk about what we did in Virginia. I just talked about the Amazon Accomack solar field. I mean, you look at renewables, what we did under my we made Virginia a leader. We weren't even in the game when I took office. Those are a lot of jobs. You talk about the pipeline. I always said, if you want to grow jobs in rural communities, in order to bring manufacturing in, John, you got to provide them with energy. And I can remember, as governor, there were several projects that I had that I recruited from overseas that we couldn't end up bringing them to Virginia because Dominion couldn't give us the long-term energy source needed to bring these big manufacturing facilities in, which is unfortunate because we didn't have it.
Right.
As you know, we import energy. We don't export, John. So if you can do it, but my point on the pipelines always is it has to be done environmentally correct. You have to protect all of our historic sites. Because of our unique history in America, if you can do it. But it really, I always say, it doesn't matter what Terry McAuliffe thinks. The regs that determine if you get a permit are determined by the General Assembly. And if you don't like it, then go change the regs. You have to change the folks in the General Assembly because at the end of the day, the head of your DEQ and others, they have to follow the law as put out by the regs that are prescribed by the General Assembly. But if you want to grow manufacturing, cheap energy is the key, but you got to do it and protect your environment. And if there's any issues in the environment, you shouldn't build a pipeline.
Governor, the majority of those that would be running against you if you decide to run are for free college. You already said you're not for that. They're also calling for Medicare for all. Several candidates have called for the abolition of all private insurance, making them illegal. How do you stand on that?
Yeah, I don't say today. Listen, here's the goal. And in fact, John, I have had discussions with your former boss, President Trump, on this topic. When he ran for office, he promised that everybody would get health care. It would be better health care. It would be cheaper and more accessible. Remember, that was his goal. When I was chairman of the National Governors, I talked to him about it. That is the goal of where we need to be in America. Not access to it, but everybody gets coverage. It's cheaper, and we need to get there. And so people put all these labels. We've got to do something about the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, they're charging. I mean, John, it is outrageous. They charge us 50% more, our companies, for drugs they sell here than they sell to people in Europe. Well, that's just not right. And so we've got to do something about the prescription drug costs and get them down. We should pay no more than any of them in Canada or in Japan or Germany or UK. We ought to pay the same price. We've got to bring those prices down. So I like to, instead of a label of Medicare for all, and I understand if you're saying to me, should every American have quality health insurance that's affordable, accessible? Absolutely. And I think, John, everybody's for it. I think the president, I know you love him, but strategically, we finish up the Mueller report, and then he comes out and has Justice file this motion to eliminate Obamacare in America, which would, would throw 20 million people immediately would lose their health care, and tens of millions of more. It would make it unaffordable for so many tens of millions more Americans. I just don't understand. And his own Senate leadership says, no, don't do this. We're not drafting a bill. I just don't understand. People want health care, and we are the greatest nation on earth. We pay a lot more than other countries around the globe, and it just doesn't make any sense.
All right, so it sounds like you're not going to campaign if you get in the race as for a government takeover of our healthcare system, correct?
No, I think the step where we need to go is we do now have Obamacare, and 20 to 30 million more Americans now have health care. I have said, John, from day one, it needs to be fixed. Things need to be done on it. I think everybody's in agreement on that. That we need to do some work on health care to do that, and that's where we ought to go. But today, to say we're getting rid of private insurance, I mean, here's the point I'm trying to make. You got 4 years as president. Right now, you've got Republicans control the Senate, and Democrats control the House. So I think it's great putting out an aspirational goal. But when I got elected governor and I got sworn in, I got to work day one on things that I knew I could work with my legislature, we could actually get done. So, I mean, I'm talking about pragmatic results to move this country forward, and I think that's what people want. But we got to, the co-pays are so high, the deductibles are so high.
Right.
I mean, this is something we all need to get in. I don't care what political party you're in. We need to get health coverage for everybody in America.
When you were governor, one of your big things is you didn't want crazy things happening. So last year, House of Delegates member Kathy Tran proposed a late third term trimester abortion bill. You've heard the whole flack over it. Basically, you can terminate the child as they're coming through the birth canal. In fact, your successor, Governor Northam, said even after it's born, it would be up to the parents, resuscitate it, make it comfortable, and then maybe terminate it, execute it, whatever the word is. That created a firestorm. If you were governor, would you have vetoed that bill if it hit your desk?
First of all, the bill as I know it, and I'm no longer governor, so I spent hours on all the bills going over them. The bill is, I believe it was, Virginia law currently requires, that before a woman can end a third trimester pregnancy, she must get 3 separate doctors to evaluate the pregnancy and really certify that it's necessary. The bill would have changed the number from 3 doctors to 1. The goal of the bill, like many other states have done this, John, if you're in Patrick County or Lee County or, if you're in a rural county, and the mother's life is in danger, it is very hard to get 3 doctors. So the whole purpose of the bill was to, in my mind, what I'd heard, is to change it from 3 to 1. And I understand that's important for women who have a health emergency, and you may not be able to get 3 doctors. If you've got one qualified, certified doctor saying, yes, the mother's life is in danger. And I remind you, John, this is very important, because this is when stuff gets caught up in the political grinder, that there have only been 2 third trimester abortions in Virginia in the last 19 years. 2. So, unfortunately, and going to your earlier premise, you're right, any discussion like this is bad for Virginia. But it got turned into a political theater, and Republicans used it to their advantage. And I think Kathy Tran, when she was asked the question about the woman dilation, the answer is no. It's not yes, it's no. And she just misspoke, or, listen, I spent a lot of time working on every bill, and as I traveled around the country, and I knew, what people wanted in their state and so forth. But, this is unfortunate, Virginia, that, we once again, we lived through, shutting down the Women's Health Center. I had to veto those bills constantly. I had to live through, the humiliation that Virginia suffered because of that crazy transvaginal. But we got to, this was a common sense bill that, in the sense, you go from 3 to 1 to help people in rural communities. It's very rarely, as I say, twice in 19 years, but unfortunately it became political. And you're right, John. None of this, anytime you get into these discussions, is not helpful to Virginia's.
Governor,
look at us. We're recruiting women CEOs and, these companies, many of them 50% women, and, they just don't want to go to a state where this debate is continually going on and women are demonized. They just don't want it.
Governor, would you have vetoed the bill, yes or no?
I would not have vetoed that bill if and listen, I haven't read the whole bill, John, but when I read the newspaper, if the one thing in the bill was to go from 3 to 1 to help in rural communities, have a qualified doctor, I would support that. Sure, I would. Because in rural communities, John, as I say, it's only twice in 19 years, a woman's life or death may be on the line. And, one doctor to me is as good as 3. Why do you need 3? If you got a qualified doctor, that's what we needed. And that was the purpose. You're out in Lee County, you lost your hospital. This is a lot more difficult than you think. But the more discussions we have, as I say, unfortunately, John, is not good. We got to get back to where we were when I left office. We're booming. Everybody loves Virginia, is for lovers. All that social stuff has been put aside. We're open. We're welcoming. Look what we were able to do. We were the first in the nation to lead on the LGBT tourism package to come, and weddings, and golly. And guess what?
Well, maybe
our economy
was
booming.
Well, look, maybe you should come back and run for governor, right? Have you thought about that?
Well, you don't want me to be president, John?
No, look, here's the deal. I got to get to some other issues, but I don't want you to be the nominee, because as the prospective Trump chairman of Virginia, you're the only Democrat I don't want to face, right? Because I think it'd be the toughest candidate in a general election. So I'd rather you come back to Virginia and run for governor, and you can run against Pete Snyder or somebody. We can all have a good time.
Yeah,
Trump
who do they have, John? I haven't actually followed it. Who's the bench on the Republican side?
Snyder. Pete Snyder.
He's definitely running?
Northern Virginia. He's tough. All right, look, I want to get some other issues. I'm gonna get back to that in a minute. So, Mueller report comes out. Your party is still clamoring for impeachment and investigations and subpoena cannons going off. When are you guys going to get to some issues here? Well,
let's first say, John, it's both sides. In fact, I watched Senator John Brasso yesterday, who was the third ranking, I think, or whatever. He's the Senate Republican Conference. He says the full report has to be released. So it is bipartisan. How do we move on, John? Let's get the full report out and let everybody look at it. But until you do that, could you imagine for a second, John, just imagine if this had been President Obama, and President Obama's Attorney General on a 400-page report basically issued a 4-page report that said, oh, goodness, there's nothing here. Are you kidding me? They would have shut streets down around the country. Get the report out. Let's take a look at it, and then we can move forward. And I think that's the best thing for the country. I mean, but the idea that, we're not going to see it, we're going to rely on the Attorney General, or it'll be out in April, it'll be so redacted. We ought to see the report. We paid for the report. We ought to see it. I mean, could you imagine it reversed the roles that during Hillary Clinton, that Chelsea Clinton had a group of Russians into her office to say we got dirt on Donald Trump? Oh, my God, the bells and noises and whistles that would have gone out. Let's put it to rest. And the only way you're fully going to put it to rest is to see this report. So let's get the Mueller report out. Let's all take a look at it, and let's move on.
All right, if you run for president, some of your opponents are for open borders, right? That's going on right now. Some of them are for abolishing ICE. How do you stand on the border crisis now? Are you for open borders, and are you for abolishing ICE?
I think everybody, John, on the Democratic side is for strong, secure borders. First of all, secure your border. We have a crisis right now on the border. We need to invest more money in the facilities down there. We should not be ripping, 2,500 children or 2,200 children away from their parent, their mother, and separating them. We shouldn't be doing that. That is not who we are as Americans. So secure the border. There's so many things. We've wasted so much time and effort on this ridiculous border wall, which Donald Trump said Mexico was going to pay for. Every day I heard it on the campaign trail. Well, guess what? Mexico is not paying for it. Let's make it secure. And we have so much different things we could do technologically with the drones and the sensors. So many things we can do. Secure the border. But Congress has punted, John, for years on a immigration bill. We need that. We need for once in all, we need an immigration bill that deals with this crisis. But, Congress continually, there is nothing happening up there. We are in an absolute stalemate. This is why we got to stop these gerrymandered districts. I spent the last 2 years traveling the country on redistricting. We need independent, nonpartisan commissions in all 50 states, because what happens, John, is no one will work with each other because of the way the lines are drawn. You cannot lose a general election. That means you can only lose in your primary, and it pushes people out to the sides. The middle, where people come together and compromise and move the ball forward, is gone in this country, and that's the problem.
Well, look, that might not be an inaccurate description of what is happening, so I agree with that. But
I'm a big believer on it.
But you're right.
When I was pushed for 4 years like a dog to get Medicaid expansion, I used to have many Republican legislatures. And let's be clear. Let's just talk about this for a second.
Right.
And you were always supportive of it. I'd gone to the hospitals. I got them to do the provider tax, so it would have cost the state no money. We would have brought $2.2 billion back a year, and 400,000 would have gotten health care, would have not cost the state any money, 35,000 new jobs, saved hospitals. You know this thing. No question should be done. I remind you, Bill Howell told me at my inauguration, you will never get it as long as you are governor. And, they wouldn't even bring it up in committee, as you know. Why? I had many Republicans from rural counties say, Governor, I get it. It will help deal with my opiate crisis. It will help deal with my issues that we have on mental illness in my districts. But if I vote for it, I will lose my Tea Party primary. And I got to tell you, John, I would stand there befuddled and really, you're not going to vote for something that would save lives, thousands of lives, and get 400,000 people health care over a job that pays you $17,000 a year? Really? That is what is wrong with politics in this country today.
Well,
and we got to fix it
because, look,
so that people have an incentive to come together. And I'm proud as governor. I got 70+% of my governor's pills passed through a very Republican legislature because, you know what? I framed everything in jobs, economic development. You invest in education, you get this. You build new roads here, you get to do it. Everything. You give people, so I did the governor's access plan for health care, paid for state dollars when the federal government was willing to pay for it. But whatever, I had to provide health care. That's what you need to do. And, just get out of bed every day, work your tail off, have fun doing it, and help people's lives. That's what you need to do, John. But this
Well, that's what we have in
acrimony that
common
we have
right there.
today, and I wish John, you're
that's
close
our
to
common
him.
ground.
I wish he'd just put his Twitter account away for a while. It's just not necessary. It's the
Not gonna
constant
happen.
attacking. John McCain is dead and buried. Leave
Let's
man
not talk
is
about
a war
McCain.
hero. Leave him alone.
Okay, look, I don't want to talk about McCain because we're
Of
running
course
out
not,
of
because it's
time.
embarrassing.
You could talk about that on the campaign trail, but as far as Congress failing on immigration reform, you're 100% right there because it's the unholy alliance that's been going on for 4 decades. Republicans taking donor money from Wall Street that want cheap labor, and your party want an open border situation to get cheap votes. Everybody knows it, and the president tore the scab off the whole thing, and now we're having the raging debate. I want to get to your presidential run if you run.
Yes,
okay, I'm trying to find a pathway here. So you get to Iowa. 45% of Iowans that are going to vote in the caucus describe themselves as socialists, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to win Iowa. You're not going to come in the top 5. Forget that. Then you go to New Hampshire. I don't think you're going to beat Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. I think he won that last time. He wins that again. So you lose Iowa big. You go to New Hampshire. That's Bernie territory. It's him or Warren. You lose that. Now you go to South Carolina. What is Terry McAuliffe's pathway if you run for the nomination?
Well, first of all, you don't throw any state overboard and say you can't win it. But if I got in, I would make the arguments that you and I have talked about. Here, results oriented. But John, you may be right. There may not be a lane. There may not be oxygen. Again, this is what you go through, and I meet with advisors all the time. We may be in a place that people talk about identity politics all the time, and a person of color or a woman, or we don't know. But you don't know unless you give it a try. But there is an important message, I think, there for a Southern governor who took a state red, made it blue, and led on all these big issues. But you're right, and I think South Carolina, my work on restoration of rights, I think any Southern state looks at Virginia as a model of what you can actually get done. So I think you would have a good, reasonable argument to make in these Southern states, and Virginia, as you know, is on March 3rd. So you got Nevada, and remember when I was chair of the party, back in 2002 and 3, we rewrote the calendar for the floor election. I was the chairman of the party that brought up South Carolina and gave it that prominent position. I brought up Michigan. I brought up New Mexico, important states and I brought up Nevada. Why? We needed to show who our party was when 98% of the African American community vote for you, and almost 70% of the Hispanic community. I brought those states up because we, as a party, need to show states that are diverse and represent who we are as a party. So, I've been at this a long, long time. I've had a lot of fun with it. Mm-hmm. We'll make a decision soon. Whatever I do, John, I'm going to do what I think is going to be the best interest of the country. And, I'm very happy. Dorothy and the family are supportive. For a couple of my kids, it's probably not the ideal thing that they want their dad to do. But if I don't do it, I'm going to figure something out, get out of bed the next day, fight like a dog, and have a great time doing it. It's just who I am. I've had a fabulous life, interesting, and, I'm just warming up. I'm just getting started.
Well, Governor, I'm going to make the same prediction I did exactly 4 years ago, April 1st. I told then Mr. Trump on the phone that if he ran, he was going to be the nominee. If he was a nominee, he was going to win. And I told him all the states he was going to win. And he's like, really? So here's your path, right?
Yes, sir.
Forget Iowa. Forget New Hampshire. You're not going to win those. You got to get to South Carolina, and that's where you throw down the gauntlet. And think about it. If Bernie Sanders wins Iowa and New Hampshire, which I think he will, then your party is faced with nominating a socialist at the top of their ticket. And you've got one shot to stop him, and that's in South Carolina, and then the Southern primaries coming up, of which I think you will sell down there like hotcakes.
Yep.
So you win South Carolina, and then I think you get right back in the hunt. You're going to win Virginia, no doubt in my mind, and then you've got a pathway. I mean, I think that's what you have to do, and if you can do that,
Well, Nevada, I'm
this
very
could
strong
turn
in
into-
Nevada. So, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of,
Yeah, this could be a successful run. Now,
Yeah.
I don't want you to win because I don't want to have to run against you in November. I'd rather you run for governor in 2021.
Okay.
That'll be fun. Mcauliffe and Pete Snyder. So
Yep.
I don't want to face you, but that's your pathway. And I think if you do run governor, you're going to be a very serious candidate for the Democratic nomination.
All right, well,
Thank
stay
you, sir.
loose. We're getting close and just finishing up all the things I need to do.
When you do announce, are you going to come back on my show?
Of course. Listen,
All right.
John, as
That's
governor,
so
as you know, I was always on your show. I loved your show.
Well, thank you.
I love radio.
You came on all the time, and I
there's
appreciate
not a
it.
better way to communicate with folks. And, back when I was chairman of the DNC, I used to go on Fox TV all the time, and Democrats say, oh, my goodness,
I know.
why are you going on Fox? Don't ever write anybody off. If you're not out making your argument, you certainly aren't going to get them to support your ideas. So go out and make your argument to everybody, and, hopefully you can convince some folks.
Governor, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us.
All
By
right,
the way,
John, great being with you, buddy.